Hey guys, with the NHL season now underway, I decided to do another mock draft for the 2021 NHL Draft. This is one of the most wide open drafts ever, with up to 10 guys who could go first overall. This draft class is considered to be weaker as there aren't as many players who are considered to be truly elite, but there are just a lot of really good players who could end up being elite. This draft class does not have great top end talent, but after the top 5, this draft is pretty average. The guys who are supposed to go 10 to 20 would probably go in that range in many other drafts. Now, before we get started, I would like to add my 16 to 20th rankings, as this is a mock draft for picks 1 to 15 for the actual teams, but I'll just do my ranking for 16 to 20 now at the beginning. So these players are... Now let's get started. Starting off at number 1, we have the Ottawa Senators, and I have them picking Brandt Clarke. He's a 6'1", 180 right shot defenseman who's a true offensive defenseman. He led all rookies defensemen in the CHL last year with 38 points for the Barrie Colts of the OHL. Now, he is also playing in the Swiss League this year, with the OHL and WHL not having started up yet. I think they are planning on starting soon, though. And Brandt Clarke hasn't been amazing. I think he only has 2 points in 7 games with his team. But, he's playing against men, and I don't think that is too much concern. When he gets back to the OHL playing against people his own age, I think he should start to show that he truly deserves to be the first overall pick. And even though I don't think Brandt Clarke's projection might necessarily be an elite player, I think he will at least be a solid first-pairing defenseman, if not a really good number 1 defenseman as well. Now let's move on to number 2, where I have the Detroit Red Wings, being the player that, even though with him against the field definitely wins for first overall. A lot of people have him going first overall, so this is Owen Power. He's a huge 6'6", 214 left defenseman playing for the University of Michigan. Now, he is being compared by some to Victor Hedman, except rather than being really elite in every single category, he's just really good. He is probably more of an offensive defenseman, but I think he does have a bit better 200-foot game than Brandt Clarke, as Brandt Clarke is just a true offensive defenseman who will put up a lot of points. I think Clarke and Power are very close together here, but Clarke for me gets the slight edge, as Power hasn't also necessarily been amazing with the University of Michigan. And even though the Red Wings GM Steve Eisman, who likes to go a bit off the board and maybe will pick guys a bit earlier than they're supposed to go, but then he ends up proving us wrong with those picks, and those picks end up actually becoming really good players, and he looks like a genius. But I think he's just going to go with the guy that most people think he would go at this position, if he's still available, which is Owen Power. Let's move on to number 3, where we have the expansion, Seattle Kraken. And I have them taking Kent Johnson. Johnson is a 6-foot center, but I think he should change the lane. It just suits his play style a lot more. He currently has 18 points in 16 games, again with the University of Michigan, playing on the same team as Owen Power. He is an elite offensive player. I think he has the talent to be even a point-per-game scorer. His big concern, though, is just his 200-foot game and his defense. And I think that he arguably has the highest upside in this draft, but the thing is, he is a lot more risky than Clarke and Power. But I think Seattle will be willing to take that risk. And even if he isn't a center, I think he can still have the potential to be their elite player. And I think Seattle will be able to develop him properly and give him the opportunities that he needs. As right when they draft him, he will be the most important player on the team. They will want to get this pick right and develop him into a star, which I think they can do. But I think Johnson will benefit from playing 1 year in the AHL first, or at least the first half, so he can develop his 200-foot game, as he is a year older than a lot of these other guys. Since he's playing in university, he's held back a year, but he's still a really, really good player. And I think playing in the AHL would be good, so they can develop his defensive game there. His offense is already up to par and elite, but I think he can really work on his defense. They're still playing in a pro setting, which is definitely a lot higher than college hockey, but still, it's not the speed and intensity of the NHL, where you can't afford to have mistakes, especially on the defensive end. So he's kind of in a less high-octane environment in the AHL while still playing pro. And moving on to number 4, we have Kent Johnson's teammate, Matthew Beniers, who played in Team USA in the World Juniors. He's another University of Michigan guy, so 2, 3, and 4, we have 3 straight University of Michigan guys. Just University of Michigan is cleaning up, and they have a lot of really good talent here. And Beniers, I think that with Johnson, he's a different player. He had 3 points in the World Juniors, and he has 13 points in 14 games right now with Michigan. he is a 6'1 center, and he is a much safer pick than Johnson. He doesn't have the upside Johnson has, but I think he can still either be a really good second-line center or a lower-end first-line center, and it's much more likely that he reaches that projection rather than Johnson. And he doesn't need to develop as much, as he already has a really good 200-foot game. He's a very complete player, which is why he is in this top 5. Even though he doesn't necessarily excel at anything, he is good at a lot of different aspects of the game, which I think the Sharks could use, as I think they should be trying, even though they're also bad this year. I think they might still, with this core that they have and the amount of money and age they are, I think they will want to try to win, as they're probably going to be bad for a while if they don't make some change. I think Beniers can right off the bat play in the NHL as a bottom 6 guy, and I think that he can come in and be a top 6 guy very soon for the Sharks. Now, let's move on to number 5 with the Vancouver Canucks. And Canucks fans, even though obviously they want them to win, they were in the playoffs last year and they made some noise, made the second round, but I have them picking Luke Hughes. So he's going to play with his brother Quinn on defense there in Vancouver. And I think Canucks fans would be super happy with this pick. He's a great defenseman. He's 6'2" left-shot defenseman, already bigger than both of his brothers. He has 13 points in 10 games in the USNTDP, and this makes 4 straight University of Michigan players, as Luke Hughes is committed to the University of Michigan next year. And I think the year after that, he can come to the NHL and maybe play in a third-pairing role with the Canucks, as right now, obviously, they've got Quinn Hughes. But other than that, they don't have many great young defensemen. So I think adding Luke Hughes, he won't be a number 1 defenseman. I think he can still be a solid number 2 defenseman. There's a potential to be a first-pairing defenseman in Vancouver. Okay, so next up at number 6, we have a team that's clearly in a rebuild mode and will still probably be pretty bad for the next couple years. But this is the Los Angeles Kings, and I have them taking the top goalie in this draft, a potential franchise goalie in Jesper Wallstedt. He's already playing in the SHL at the age of 17. It's very rare to see draft-eligible players playing in the SHL, but not only is he playing with Luleå in Sweden, he's a .916 save percentage, and he had a .923 save percentage for Team Sweden in the World Juniors. He's a 6'3 goalie, and in my opinion, and a lot of other opinions, he is the best goalie prospect since Carey Price, who went 5th overall to the Habs in 2005. I think Wallstedt is better than Askarov, who went 11th overall last year, better than Spencer Knight, who went 13th overall in 2018. Wallstedt has the potential to be a franchise goalie, and I think when it turns to just how good he will be, he is without a doubt the best player in this draft, but the fact that he is a goalie definitely drops them a little bit. But the Kings need a goalie, so I think picking up Wallstedt will be pretty easy for them if they have a later pick, but I think they'll still go for him at number 6. If they got Byfield last year, I think their forwards are fine. On D, they could use a defenseman, but I think goalie right now, they have the chance to pick up Wallstedt, so I don't think they'll pass on that opportunity. And moving on to number 7, we have the New York Islanders picking William Eklund. He's a 5'10 left wing, playing with Alexander Holtz with the Djurgårdens in the SHL. He currently has 15 points in 27 games. He's had a great year, and definitely, I think, been a top 5 pick in this draft, and we just talked about his production for this season. But he is a little undersized. He is 5'10, and he's not a center. He's a left wing, but I think that production and the amount of points he has put up, and just the way he's played overall, I think he is deserving of definitely being at least a top 8 pick. And going to the Islanders here, a team that, other than Barzal, just has a lot of decent players, but nobody necessarily great. I think Eklund has the potential to even be a first liner for the Islanders, and if he can continue this in the SHL, I think he could be a top 5, top 3, maybe even be in consideration for the first overall pick. Let's move on to the Calgary Flames at number 8, and I have them picking at Dylan Guenther. Now, Guenther is a guy who's dropped a little bit for me. Before I had him going top 3, top 4. He is now going 8. He's a 6-foot left wing. He had 59 points in 58 games last year in the WHL with the Winnipeg Ice, same team as Matt Moore, even though he didn't really play last year. But now Guenther has 5 points in 4 games this year in the AJHL, which is really just not that great of a league. And even though that's not bad, he's over a point per game. The AJHL is just a pretty bad league, and I think he is expected to do this at the very least, which is why he drops a bit. I think he can still have that potential to be a lower-end first liner, and I think Calgary, even though they kind of do need defense, I think that they will want to pick up Guenther here with potential. He put up that production in the WHL last year, so I think if they restart, he could continue to pick it up. Now moving on to number 9, we have the Anaheim Ducks picking Carson Lambos, another blackshot defenseman, who had 32 points in the WHL last year, and he currently has 11 in 13 games with the JYP U20 League in Finland, which is basically just the junior league for Liga under 20. Lambos is only 17, that's pretty good numbers there. He could be better, but I think once the WHL starts again, he should put up some big numbers. I think it's also important to note he has played his first game in the Liga. He didn't put up any points, but again, it is the Liga, and I think he could go to the Flames and could go even higher. He has the potential to easily be a top 5 pick, but I think this is just solely based on team needs. And the Flames, I think it's kind of 50-50 whether they go Guenther or Lambos, but I think Lambos could be a solid first pairing defenseman, or if not, a good number 3 defenseman for the Ducks. Now moving on to number 10, we have the Buffalo Sabres picking Simon Edvinsson. Edvinsson is another big 6'4", but he's a right shot defenseman. He currently has 1 point with Frölunda in the SHL, and even though he is a very good player, there are some concerns and holes in his game, which is why I think he dropped. Now, Bob McKenzie had him going 2nd in his rankings, and he said 2 of the scouts had him even going 1st overall. I don't think he is at that level, as he has some major holes in his game that need to be fixed, such as his terrible decision making, and overall, he's just not that great with the puck, and I think those are things that could be fixed, and if they are, he could turn out to be a really good top 3, top 2 defenseman in the NHL, and I think he has the potential to be a first pairing guy on Buffalo, and I think Buffalo with Ristolainen playing well, I think Dahlin needs to pick it up, but he was the 1st overall pick. He's a franchise level defenseman. Edvinsson, though, I think as Buffalo just needs depth, and I think even if Edvinsson doesn't turn into first pairing defenseman, Edvinsson can be a really good defenseman on Buffalo, a team that just overall needs more to them. Now next up at 11, I have the Nashville Predators taking Aatu Räty, the biggest dropper in this draft. He is a center, he has 3 goals in 12 games with Karpat in the Liga, and that is not bad, it's just not what we expected as a guy who many thought would go 1st overall in this draft a year ago. And even though he hasn't had such a great year this year, it's not terrible. I think that Nashville will be willing to take the risk on him, but I think Nashville's a really interesting team, as I think they could end up going in rebuilding mode in as early as 2-3 years from now with their goalie problems. And Askarov, I mean, he didn't look too great in the World Juniors. I think he can still be an elite goalie, but I'm not too certain about him, and he might not develop into their guy in net, but still, he's still 2-3 years away from the NHL. But I think bringing in Roddy, he doesn't have the highest potential in this draft, but I think he can still be a solid second liner, which I think is a win if he can become that for Nashville. Now let's move on to number 12, where we have the New York Rangers taking Fabian Lysell. And Lysell's a guy I really like. He's a 5'11" right wing. He has 2 points in 16 games in the SHL. He's playing on the same team as Jesper Wallstedt. And even though the stats don't necessarily pop off, you have to remember that he is playing in the SHL against men as only a 17-year-old. And he is a bit smaller, 5'11", but that's actually pretty decent size. And I think he has the potential to be a solid second-line right wing. I think he's pretty similar to Räty, and I think they both turn out to be pretty much similar. They're kind of interchangeable. But Lysell is a guy that some people have going out to the top 15, but I think that's just a bit too low for him, as he has a ton of talent. Now, moving on to 13, we have the Blackhawks, who I just like to add, I think will probably end up getting a top 10 pick. They're overperforming. I think a big reason why is Kevin Lankinen has just an amazing net for them, but I don't think that can continue, as it just doesn't happen. But we have the Blackhawks here taking Cole Sillinger. He's a center, and he had 53 points in only 48 games last year with the Medicine Hat Tigers of the WHL. And he currently has 12 points in 8 games in the USHL, which is actually pretty good for a 17-year-old, and I think he can be a solid second-line center. He's someone who I think is pretty underrated. I really like him. He's just a great offensive player, big offensive threat all around, who will put up a lot of points, and I think that's something the Blackhawks could add behind their core of Kane, Taves, and Brinkett. As Kane, Taves, I think they're not really a big part of the future, but I think adding Sillinger, he can be a big goal scorer for this team, and overall just put up a lot of points. He has a ton of potential. Now, next up at 14, our second last pick, I had the Blue Jackets taking Zachary Leroux. Another guy I think is a bit underrated. He's a 5'11" power forward, so definitely a smaller power forward, but he is a power forward. He just plays like that, and he has 15 points in 14 games right now in the QMJHL, which is pretty good. QMJHLs are already started. He played well last year as well, but I think he's deserving of a top 15 pick. He's a winger, and I think that with Max Domi not playing well, Columbus, they don't have any star talent at forward. And I think at this pick, they won't get much, but LaRue is still a really good player. He has some potential. And I wouldn't be surprised if Columbus tries to trade this pick or something, as they are a really good team. They've got Seth Jones, Zach Werenski, Korpisalo, and Merzukins in net. But LaRue is a good player, and I think at this pick, this is something that the Blue Jackets would like to take. Now, with our final pick in this draft, I have the Minnesota Wild taking a player that I believe is the most underrated player in this draft. He's such a good player, but does not get the recognition he deserves. I have him taking Xavier Bourgault. He's a center. He has 17 points in 12 games with the Shawinigan Cataracts of the QMJHL. He does have defensive concerns, which is why he's a bit lower than Sillinger and LaRue, even though he has more points than them. But he has a really high ceiling, especially offensively, lots of potential, and he is improving his defense, which is good. And I think the Wild are a team that just needs more offense. They got Kaprizov, but I think overall they're a bit of an older team. Their defense is fine, but I think bringing in Bourgault with his potential would be really good for them, as they're pretty thin at center. They don't have much high-end talent, and Bourgault has the potential to be, I think he can definitely be a second liner, if at least a middle six guy, but I wouldn't be surprised if he turns out to be a first-line center. So there is my mock draft. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please remember to drop a like below and smash that like subscribe button. Also, comment your thoughts down below on this mock draft. So that's it, guys. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.